Welcome to the IoT Podcast, the home of IoT talks and tales. I'm your host this week, Tom White. Tune in every Monday as we're joined by the biggest names in IoT to unravel the trends, misconceptions and predictions for the Internet of Things. Make sure you're subscribed and press the notification bell so you're never out of the loop. Hi guys, before we get into the episode today, I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor, Akenza.io. Akenza.io are a self-service IoT platform allowing you to build great IoT products and services with real value. And welcome back to the show, and hello Birgit, thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. As I was saying backstage, I was really looking forward to this. We are incredibly interested, obviously, in digital twins, the work that you're doing at Bosch, and of course, Catena. It's fantastic. So perhaps as a good starting place as ever, if you could talk a little bit about your background, how you got into this world, and you know what's kind of led you up to the varying positions of responsibility you have at the moment. It'd be really good if you could do that, Birgit, please.
Okay, so I'm with Bosch already for a very long time in the meantime. And but what is exciting is that there is always something new, and also for me, digital twins, that's something. Also, it's already older, as we all know. It came up for me only the last years, and so perhaps my background first. So I'm with Bosch for more than 25 years. I'm a software engineer or software architect. I was one of the first, probably, where software architect as a role was really defined. I was with product line. Introduction of product lines, software product lines. And many people probably don't know that Bosch really has more than 40,000 software developers. Most think of Bosch as, that's a company of hardware, stuff and components and all of this. But at least in the last years, also Bosch invested a lot into the topic of IoT, IIoT, and of course, and there Bosch was also one of the drivers, of course, Industry 4.0. And now this is exactly when when I started also coming into the topic of digital twins, when I started with Industry 4.0. So I was not with the initiative in Germany. So in Germany, it's well known Industry 4.0 or Platform Industry 4.0. That's a German initiative, but in the meantime, I think the term Industry 4.0 is very well known. And I started in this initiative, and there I learned about it was called Industry 4.0 component. As you see, it's coming from hardware in a way more. And what was it? It was an asset, a physical asset, typically together with, it was called, or it's still called, asset administration shell. Of course, my first thinking was asset administration shell. This sounds a little bit strange. But then I came into the topic and learned what it is really about. And I was really, excited about the possibilities that came up with this asset administration shell. It was a standardized way of exchanging information. And later I learned, so I did not come from digital twins. I came from really the asset administration shell, and then learned this is exactly what other people would call a digital twin. And I saw the possibilities, of course, also before, but and now also when using the term digital twin, and we all know it's also a buzz term. We will talk about what it is later. That's how I came into the topic. And since I'm involved in standardization already for a long time, also in my former positions, and I was always keen to collaborate with different business units, different sectors, to standardize, to bring people together to collaborate. So this was then what I said. Yes, exactly. As a digital twin, and if you really want to do cross-company interaction, data exchange, we need something. Yes, and that's for me the digital twin. And digital twin alone is not enough. We need an interoperable digital twin, and I hope we will talk about this in this talk.
Well, no, absolutely, and thank you for the introduction. I think you've come across a really good link there, which is something I want to get into: semantic interoperability in digital twins, because I think digital twins as a concept is becoming more popular. And often on this show, I talk about technologies within IoT use cases and how that transcends mainstream culture. And it's a really nice timing, because one of the first digital twins actually in a kind of fictional sense was the film Avatar. Right, if you remember the film Avatar, so everyone had an avatar and it was being controlled, by inside the ship, right? And of course, this weekend, the new Avatar film is being released. So this is an example of a fictional digital twin that brings it to the mainstream. And I think it's really important that shows like this, like ours, and the talks that you've given in the past as well, highlights the importance of digital twins to people that are outside of the industry. I think that's really, really important, because if it's going to increase in its popularity and its use cases, then it needs to transcend other industries and cultures, etc. Right? But this term here, semantic interoperability in digital twins, is a really interesting one. Now, you have to explain this in a way for some people who are new to digital twins, Birgit. So could you talk about what that actually is and what it means?
Yes. So typically, I'm not liking to give definitions, but it's also sometimes more easier to explain what it is not.
Yeah.
So, for example, many people think it's a simulation model or something like this, or it's a 3D model. It's okay to call it digital twin, no question about this. But the understanding, or also my understanding, and also the understanding of Platform Industry 4.0 or the Industrial Digital Twin Association, is that it's more, the central point of contact, so to say, where you get all the information you need about a thing, an asset. So it's really called asset administration shell, because if it doesn't have any value to you, you don't need a digital twin. That's the first thing. So it's really an asset. And an asset it is not necessarily a physical thing. That's also what many people think. It needs to be something physical, and you get the data from the physical machine or something like this. It's also, yes, it's part of it, but it's not mandatory to have this kind of connection. So I prefer to have a broader definition of a digital twin. Of course, it's always the same. A digital twin is a digital representation of something. That's typically the definition, but it doesn't help. Not really, because it could be anything. So it's really about getting the information, and only getting the information you need. So some people say, and sometime in some days or some months, we will then have a great digital twin, and we'll have all the details on everything that is possible. But it's not about possibility. It's about needing. What exactly do you need to know, and why? And where do you get the data from? Who has the data? Who will provide it to you? Is the other party willing to share the data? These are the more interesting questions, at least when it comes to standardization and interoperability. So it's not about one digital twin, about one thing, about one city or something like this. It's really more about the cross company or cross use case, or within a use case. Always only what you need. So don't do too much. And since a digital twin, and that's a nice thing, what I love, it's modular and extensible. So even if you start with something some people wouldn't call a digital twin, for example, just offer the documentation of your product, and not in paper, but electronically. This would be the first aspect you would provide via a digital twin. And then if you have your product, you would scan its nameplate. So digital nameplate is one of the very important use cases. You get the documentation. Many people would say, it's not a digital twin. Yes, but it is. It offers you the information you need about your machine. Then later you can add more information, you can add operating data, you can add a 3D model, also a simulation model, everything you need. But I always say, start small and don't think about whether it's already a digital twin or not. Just use the standard. That's the easiest way to start. Use the asset administration shell specification. Just start with a very easy kind of information all your customers want. and add it. And then later add other aspects you need, depending on the customer needs, on the needs of of your business models, whatever you have in mind. So that's for me a digital twin. It's really the center where you get everything you need to know about the asset under consideration. That's the digital representation of the asset for me.
Yeah, and that's a good summary. And I go back to how you answered that. You didn't want to define it, and I think that's really important because digital twins to different people mean different things. And I think what you're really talking about is the assets and being able to then use those assets in a digitized way. And that's one step, isn't it? Because the next step is then working with data science and data engineers to actually use that in a meaningful way. Because it's all very well and good taking the information, but what are you going to do with that information? But it kind of what's the word? It kind of it strikes to me when you talk about that the assets could be different for different people, though, right? So you don't want to strip out all of the information. It's the information that you do need. But in terms of interoperability, surely for different people, you have different assets and different versions of the same digital twin. So how does that work when you have a common standard? Because asset verification, do you simply pull the assets that you need per that use case that digital twin might be in existence for? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
Okay, so I agree. The digital twin, in my understanding, is an asset-oriented approach. Yes, so without an asset, no digital twin. But it's not that, and you can also have more than one digital twin for the same asset. But typically, so in an ideal world, I would say there is exactly one that is offering all the information you need. And you are completely right when I say what you need, of course, then the real standardization process starts. Because if there are similar products for similar, so what you want to do, for example, in production is to exchange one machine with another machine and don't change your software solution. I think you also mentioned that digital twins are more like an enabler. They are not the application themselves. They can be intelligent, so they are also intelligent digital twins, but typically, or in most cases, the digital twin provides the data to making more intelligent stuff. Because you get all the information, for example, of your factory, if we stay with Industry 4.0, and or from the car if we talk about Catena-X, and then you can decide how to, for example, exchange a machine and don't change your solution because there is a standard on exactly this kind of information you need. So there is a lot of, it's not only the digital twin as a communication vehicle that is standardized, but of course also the chunk of information you want to exchange. And some is standardized, some is proprietary. So you can, because it's extensible, modular, you can also add your own stuff and say, okay, that's my business model. Perhaps you even take a license or something if somebody's using this one. But others are free and standardized, so everybody can use it. For example, documentation, digital nameplate, something like this. These are typically the first use cases you start. And these you would share with all your customers or even with the world. It depends. So.
Yeah. I think standardization, it's interesting because the different podcasts that I've done on the IoT podcast over the years, we always talk about standardization being the blocker in the past, right? About the growth. Because if you don't have the standardization, it means different things to different people and different services and products, and it's hard to scale anything without it. So it's really nice that that you talk about that. And I guess, is this something that the IDTA, and for people that aren't aware, it's the Industrial Digital Twin Association, of which you're a board member. Is this something that you talk? Is this something that you talk about, and this something that you try and roll out to its members, and this standardization and interoperability that we're discussing at the moment?
Exactly. So, Industrial Digital Twin Association, exactly, you mentioned it. It was founded in 2020, so it's not very old, and it's a kind of spin-off of Platform Industry 4.0. So in reality, it's much older. So what we discuss there, so it's not just starting discussing digital twins, but really, as you just said, it's about roll out. So our thinking is the technology is now mature enough, and we want to enable as many companies as possible to implement it and to take to be a partner in this complete ecosystem where you can exchange data. So the concept of data spaces, that is also very important for Catena-X. That's especially that's in the focus of all the activities, at least in Germany and Europe in the moment. It's really about exchanging data, and we are doing everything to also enable small size companies and mid-size companies to also on board and to take part in such an ecosystem. And that's the main thing, how to enable that really everybody can participate. And that's only possible if there are some standards around how to exchange the data, and also some standardized models. Which data do you want to exchange and why? Again, but always also here, which use case do we have in common if we are several companies? Where do we need to agree to reach our common goal? So it's in data spaces, then it always the common use case, like for example sustainability, carbon footprint, and all this stuff. These are very good examples where you really need data from others. And if you don't want to do it in bilateral way and say, okay, give me your data, you give it, and then, oh, what does it mean? And everybody does it a little bit different, then we will not be successful. That's why we are exactly talking about these cross-cutting use cases. And and there we want to provide a solution with our interoperable digital twins.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's truly excellent. And I think some of the work that the IDTA are doing is fantastic. And that's why it's such a pleasure to have you on the show, being a board member of that and knowing so much around digital twins and what we can do with it in the future. You've mentioned this a couple of times around Catena-X and your involvement with Catena-X. Could you explain for our listeners what Catena-X is and what its kind of mission is amongst its members?
Yes, so Catena-X is even newer than the IDTA, but of course all of this, and perhaps we should also mention then the third organization in Europe, Gaia-X, probably also some of our audience heard of it. I think these are the three. No, Catena-X in a way is in parentheses just a use case, or many use cases from the automotive industry. So this is an automotive ecosystem, and it is and Gaia-X is more general. So Gaia-X is for any data space you want to set up for independent of the domain. So it provides really the fundamental topics and solutions to build up such a data space. And IDTA is then offering the solution how to exchange data and to standardize the data, how to do it via digital twins. That's the easiest way from our strong belief that this is really the way to go. And this is exactly what is also done in Catena-X. And Catena-X, as I said, will build up automotive system, ecosystem or data space. And it's perhaps interesting to know that if you talk about Catena-X, in reality, there are three different organizations in Catena-X. There is a consortium that's funded by the German government. So that's a project where we are doing a lot of open source and really implementing and testing and realizing all this data space, how to do it. Then we do have an association that's completely different thing. So in the consortium, I think there are more than 28 members or something. But in the association, there are many, many more. And that's also international. There's nothing German anymore about this. Right. Of course, there are German, because German automotive industry is quite strong. Of course, there is also a lot of German participation, but it's open for international. Every supplier in the context of automotive, everyone, and not only suppliers like Bosch, but also recyclers and everybody who has some stake in the automotive industry could join. So this is the association, but still this is not the whole story, but because the third pillar is the operating companies that will also be set up very soon, and that's really then business operating. It's not only association where you meet and talk a little bit and so on, or a consortium where you work together. So it's the goal is really a working data space. So the goal is to really exchange data, conform it to the standards we are setting in Catena-X, we are piloting. We have very strong use cases, sustainability, circular economy, quality, and some others. So there is really, business behind. Yeah. And legal requirements. We should not forget to mention the legal requirements. I personally think that legal will probably be the driver here in this case. For example, with sustainability and circular economy, depending on what the government is requesting, the law is requesting with respect to recycling, to whether you need to provide the carbon footprint and how and so on. There is also another topic, the product passport is discussed in Europe, for example, a digital product passport, and that's exactly a digital twin. So which kind of information is requested to be provided together with your product? And so I think also legal will be a strong driver for really, because otherwise, if you don't have the data, we will not be able to fulfill the requirements. But then, of course, all of us also hope for business, and of course, there are also a lot of business ideas. But in the first place, probably these legal requirements are even helping to go forward even more, I would say.
Yeah. I think it's colossal, isn't it? The undertaking that people are taking
Yes.
to shift to EV and the timescales that have been put in place. We released an episode recently with Indranil Mitra from AWS talking around software-defined vehicles, and I think Catena-X and your involvement in Catena-X when it comes to data sharing is critical, isn't it? And it's nice that you've got 28 consortium members, did you mention, who are part of that from the German automotive industry, because if we're going to do it from a legal sustainability and meet the deadlines required, then we need to work together. And I think that's really, really important. When we talk about standardizations of technology, it's also important that technology businesses, which the automotive industry is becoming more and more, because of course it's now batteries and so on rather than engines as it used to be, is focused around that. So really, really nice to see, and I think a very good collaborative approach.
Just to mention, there are more than 100 participants already in the association, right. And also in the IDTA, the Industrial Digital Twin Association. These are also all the big companies you know, from manufacturing, Siemens, Bosch, Schneider Electric, and many, many more. So even 28 founding 22, I think, founding members. And in the meantime, there are also more than 80. Also IT companies like SAP, of course. All of this is also not working without IT companies. So I think it's really a great common effort of the industry to make this really happen. And I see really a very, very strong drive in the moment. There is really a lot of power behind all of this in the moment. It's not just a concept. It's really bringing it to the street. Yes.
Yeah, literally to the street.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I mean, you're incredibly busy because we barely touched, obviously, yet on your involvement at Bosch, right? So you're involved in the IDTA, you're involved in Catena-X, obviously GAIA-X, the larger association of data exchange. Um, Very very busy. I don't know how you do it all, Birgit. It's incredible. A quick word from today's episode sponsor, Akenza.io. Guys, I speak to a lot of organizations wanting to develop their own smart solutions, and the common barriers that keep cropping up is complexity. This is why I'm so behind Akenza.io. Using their no-code self-service platform, companies can build great IoT products with value cases, connecting, controlling, managing, and securing IoT devices, all in one place at speed and scale. Their unbiased technology makes it possible to register any type of device via any connectivity technology, process the data and make it available to any application in the cloud. The platform is adapted to organizations of all sizes, from startup to enterprise, from one device to massive IoT deployments. Thanks to the self-service solution, you can start creating your IoT case right away, even without coding skills. Akenza.io are offering an exclusive 30-day free trial, so you can test the platform out for yourself. Check out the link in the description and start building your smart solution today. So obviously you've been at Bosch for a very, very long time. What is your now involvement at Bosch? So you said that Bosch was really interested at the start of the conversation around investing in digital twins, investing in IoT and Industry 4.0 and IIoT, or what we used to call machine-to-machine in industry. What is it that you do at Bosch, and why is Bosch so interested in this industry?
Okay, Bosch is a very large company. We do have more than 70, I think, factories worldwide. So, of course, like all companies, we are also thinking about our supply chains, about how to make production more efficient and all of these questions. So, of course, we are very interested in Industry 4.0 and everything that can help us. And when we started with also discussing digital twins and semantic technology in Bosch, of course, we had the same problem in a way like cross-company interaction, because of course in a company, in a large company like Bosch, we also have data silos. So that's it's a reality, and this was exactly the starting point also inside of Bosch, how to overcome the data silos inside the company. But then of course we also saw, it's the same thing in the company with other companies. So and all have the same problem. Because we all are now working on data-driven business models, and then you need to look at your data, and then you see, oh, it's a little bit very heterogeneous. A lot of misunderstandings because the semantics is not yet clear and everything. And that's exactly how we started. And so we are both at Bosch. I said we are also a software company, so to say. But of course, we are also a manufacturing company and producing products. So we have both. So we have the domain knowledge about the things that will get a digital twin, and we can talk about some applications we do have, and also offering the software itself, and also on the external market. So we just had the launch of our Bosch Semantic Stack, we call it. It's the name of our product at the Bosch Connected World in Berlin. 2 months ago exactly. So we are now offering also our knowledge to the external customers, and that's exactly how we do it. We use our own tools, of course, in our domain, in our factories, with our business units, and we do have different business units. Not only automotive, we just talked about automotive, but of course we also have industrial technology, Rexroth, perhaps some know Bosch Rexroth. Americans, I think, pronounce it Rex Ross or something like this. So perhaps if you don't understand my pronunciation. We have a lot of different applications inside, but also some of them will get to the outside. And then it's again something a service, an additional service for our own components, that software-based services. So we are calling it data-driven intelligence for our automotive domain. So you will have predictive maintenance, a health indicator for your fleet management. Are there problems with your fleet? Where do you need to plan maintenance? Similar applications, early warning, but also warranty. So sometimes if perhaps you already had an issue with your car and went to the garage, is this now a warranty case or not? And in the future, you don't need a physical vehicle anymore to check it. Just look at the data, and then you will already see a lot what happened, and can make much easier decisions, and the user experience will get much better also for the OEM. So that's services we can offer based on our own knowledge, our domain knowledge of Bosch. That's not possible with our IT knowledge. That's only possible with domain knowledge. And Bosch Rexroth, they are from industrial sector. They have electric drives and such components they provide. They just also launched also in November this year. They worked on it for several years. Digital twins for nearly all of their products. They have 170 millions of digital twins already in place. So the goal really is to have a twin for every product we are producing, and for every product type and for every product instance. And I think that's a tendency in general to really look at the instance, to really look at the concrete product and get the data from the concrete product, and not only make some assumptions. Most probable it is like this. You really look at the concrete product, and you only provide the product the customer needs for this product. I think we all know these documentations where you have to look for your own configuration, what is relevant for you. So it should only be the information relevant for exactly this thing. That's what the digital twin is for.
Yes, yeah, and that's what we discussed at the start of the episode: the right assets, what you need,
exactly.
and it all loops back. Well,
yeah.
Why do you believe that digital twins are becoming more and more apparent today? Is it because there is a coalition of technology enabling it to happen, or is it just because it seems kind of a kind of flavor of the industry at the moment?
No, it's not that you need a very specific technology that was not there before. So no, it's in a way quite easy, and I think that is exactly why it can be successful, because it's not very complicated, and really everybody can start implementing it. And I think it's what made it possible is a consensus to talk to each other and to say and agree how to do it. Because the problem is exchanging data. Exchanging data is nothing really. We all know we all exchange data every day with email or whatever, file exchange, whatever. So that's not the issue. What do we have? We have a web API, a standardized one. We have a meta model, a standardized one. It's not complicated new technology you need to learn. That's, I think, and this will make it successful. I think that it's really it's more the consensus that was missing, not the technology. And now we do have the consensus. We do have the Industrial Digital Twin Association. We do have Catena-X, where we all want to achieve one goal, and that's why, if you want it, you will. I hope so.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I think yes, it's a really poignant remark. It's a consensus to do this, but also I think it's because of regulation saying that, if we talk about Catena-X, for instance, you will stop producing internal combustion engine cars at this date, and so you need a hard stop, a hard date, in order to work backwards to drive consensus further, because otherwise it becomes this kind of esoteric technology that people talk about, but there isn't a real pressing need to do it, to implement it. So I think, if anything, it's a good thing that we have a date to work towards as a European and UK and global nation to be able to do this. And some of the work that you're doing, both within Bosch and the IDTA and Catena-X, etc., is really pushing this. And if it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't be so far ahead as we are. So it's really interesting to get into that today. You mentioned, obviously, around a little bit more about Bosch's influence around semantic data structuring and knowledge graphs for complex data queries, etc. This kind of open standards in the connected industry is really important, isn't it? And Bosch is really quite a leader in some of these elements and has been for some time. Obviously, you mentioned Bosch Connected World 2 months ago in Berlin. The need for these standards and the needs for these graphs, is there a long way to go, or are we quite advanced already?
Okay, thank you for mentioning Bosch as one of the drivers. But when I'm talking about standardization, it's not only one company. That's what is making Industry 4.0 successful. Of course, also Bosch was also very involved in open source development, for example, from very early. And this is in the meantime also mainstream in a way. So Catena-X is doing open source, IDTA is doing open source, DTC, the Digital Twin Consortium, is doing open source in US, the Digital Twin Consortium. So all are doing open source, and I think we have a lot of experience also there, and we also contributed a lot to the open source community. Also, our Bosch Semantic stack, our tooling, is using a lot of open source code. So that's, I think, also a difference in doing products today and how to collaborate. I think this was not possible, or we didn't do it in former times. This is something in the last years that became more and more important as well. And that's really the community thinking that is important when discussing these kinds of toolings.
And I think that's a key takeaway for us in this episode, isn't it? Standardization, community, and working together to do this. Because, as you say, Bosch is a leader, clearly, but it's not just one company that can make this happen, right?
No.
Everyone has to do this together. What's in terms of predictions? So we always like to ask thought leaders in the space what their predictions are. You laugh because maybe we'll play this back in a year's time and see if it came true. But where do you think 2023? Obviously, we're coming to the end of the year, but when we're filming this, it's mid-December. Where do you think we will be next year with digital twins? Is there anything big on the horizon, or predictions that you see for the industry taking specifically around digital twins?
So I think so that it's really a mature technology now, and okay, I wouldn't say that in the end of 2023 already every product will have a digital twin, but that's every vehicle, every car, for example, in the context of Catena-X, for example. This will not be the case, but I think we will see it really in operating. What we already see today is that there are more and more commercial tools. They were not yet on the market, but for example, the Bosch Semantic stack, but there are also other IT companies offering commercial solutions. And this is, I think, especially important also for smaller companies to join the party, so to say. And they really also offer the standards, so that you don't have a vendor login or something like this. So I think this is what will happen next year, that there are a lot of offerings in the context of these ecosystems based on digital twins, so that you really can exchange data then via the digital twins and also really have support. Not only open source is extremely important, I mentioned it, but open source alone also not everybody is able to then make really production ready solutions or out of open source. So there will be commercial solutions next year for all of this.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. That would be amazing if we could do that, because I think it's a commercial solution that will get the smaller companies involved. And I think when that happens, it becomes less of this kind of big multinational PLC AG businesses that are operating at this level. And this will help go full circle to making it more popularized in mainstream culture and around different use cases that can happen with digital twins. In the same way, I spoke about software here, in the same way that low code and no code solutions will change how programs are created in the future. The same perhaps could be said for digital twins, but I think that's the first step, isn't it? Is commercializing it, getting it into the smaller businesses and getting more people using it and seeing the benefit of having it. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. I've got one final question for you, Birgit, and this is coming from an audience member, actually. And it would be great to ask you this. How do you think companies should assess potential partners at the start of their IoT journey? And are there any questions that they should be asking to assess those potential IoT partners?
I would, of course, ask them whether they are supporting the standards, because then it's quite easy to collaborate. So since I'm coming more from standardization and committee work, I'm always saying I would join a corresponding association. Then you always have a lot of similar-minded people working on the same issues for discussion and for really also, you can also influence them, the standards and so on. So I think this is the way typically to go. And for bilateral communication, I can't say anything. So this is it's really also sharing experience, and if you are not involved anywhere, though, of course, if you are just looking from the outside, it looks more complex. And if you are inside and really know where it came from and what the people are discussing in the moment and where we are going and all of this. So, and of course, perhaps also prediction, I hope, more a wish than a prediction, perhaps, that it's getting also more international. And that, the world is coming also closer, because all of this, our supply chains are international. So this is really the way to go and to really collaborate.
Yeah. Fantastic. Such great insights into digital twins, your involvement in the IDTA, and really pushing standards. And I, on a personal level, agree with you. Without standards, you have no benchmark. And if you have no benchmark, then you can't exceed the benchmark or get better than it. So I completely agree. Dr. Birgit Boss, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. It's been absolutely excellent having you here. We really, really enjoyed it. Where could people find out more about you or about Bosch? Social media, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. I'm on LinkedIn. Please just connect with me if you are interested in the topic of digital twins. And of course, you will also find in the internet a lot of information about the Bosch Semantic Stack. Just search for Bosch Semantic Stack, and on Bosch Connected Industry, you will find a lot of more information about all of this. Of course, and also Catena-X has a website, IDTA. There is a lot of information available. Just use it. Yes, I would be happy to get more parties into the community.
Excellent. Thank you, Birgit, once more. Before we go, I wanted to thank today's episode sponsor, Akenza.io. Don't forget to check out the link in the description and gain access to a 30-day free trial of their self-service platform. Thanks for tuning in to the IoT Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're on. See you next week for more IoT talks and tales.